What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show. It's Monday, January 30th, 2017, start of a brand new week. The hackers are already pounding on my server, trying to keep people from seeing and listening to the show, forgetting, of course, that a lot of people are tuning in directly through the Republic Broadcasting website. So we'll let the children have their little tantrum and do what they're going to do, because apparently their parents did not raise them very well. All right, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble here. Quick reminder, Don Wiskin of Extendovite will be our guest tomorrow. Let's see, February 1st, rather. 30 days, September, April, June, November. Okay, so he'll be here on Wednesday. And we'll be talking to him about Extendovite. Now then, right now the big furor, if you will, is Donald Trump's executive order imposing limitations on immigration. And, of course, the liberals and the Democrats are just going ballistic, and they're screaming, oh, he's banning Muslims, it's racist, it's this, it's that. No, it isn't. First of all, the word Muslim does not appear anywhere in that executive order. Okay? Trump is not banning Muslims. He has imposed a 90-day pause in travel from specific nations who do not like the United States, because the United States has been bombing and drone striking and regime changing those nations for the last several years. Trump is being cautious. He's putting the safety and security of the American people as a priority over liberalism and globalism and New World Order and all the rest of it. Now, back when Obama was president, he was bombing 5 of the 7 countries Trump has named. The media didn't care. We couldn't get the corporate media to even look at all the death and carnage over there. Oh, but we're going to close the immigration, the open borders. Oh, my goodness, it's a horrible, horrible thing. Well, you know, again, the corporate media's hypocrisy is stunning, because remember, Obama, when he was president, supported a border wall. And he had a very strict immigration policy in his first term. Then it changed dramatically. Now, needless to say, the crybabies and the whiners are out there. Apparently, over in Portland, Oregon, there was a riot at the airport where these anti-Trump, pro-immigration people were out there screaming, physically attacking people. One pro-Trump demonstrator got clubbed with a metal pole of some kind, and all the time these protesters are screaming, it's a peaceful protest. Really, it's a peaceful protest. Nothing to see here, people. Now, here's where it gets a little sticky, because Trump's immigration ban is based on a U.S. law signed into law by President Barack Obama. It's not like Trump just came up with this out of a clear blue sky. And, of course, we here in America understand immigration got completely out of control. And Americans are supporting his ban. And let's see, I ran a poll on my website. I haven't even looked at it lately. I'll have to find that next commercial break. There's just so much going on. But Americans are supporting this. And here's where it gets interesting. As you know, all of these sanctuary cities and everything are going to judges to get stays and orders. Oh, you will, refuse Donald Trump's policy and everything. And apparently, according to the ACLU, federal customs agents are enforcing Trump's executive memo. And they are openly ignoring the Brooklyn judge's demand that these travelers from these 7 countries not be deported. And they're moving forward with it. Now, California, of course, is real big on illegal immigrants. 10% of the illegal immigrants live in Southern California. And so they're out there saying, oh, no, this is horrible. We love our illegal immigrants. We love to spend our tax money supporting these people. And California is now threatening to cut off all funds to Washington, sort of reversing Trump saying that funds will be cut to sanctuary cities who refuse to cooperate with federal immigration policy. And now California is saying, well, we're just not going to forward all tax revenues we've collected on federal income tax. Now, I have a thought at this point. Maybe this idea of California seceding is actually a good one. And let's let them go, wave a fond goodbye, and they can flood their nation with as many illegal immigrants as they please. Now, Senate Democrats are already out there trying to get enough support to pass some kind of a bill that would repeal Trump's immigration ban, even though Trump's immigration ban is based on similar bans by Obama and Carter. Can you see the hypocrisy there? We used to have strong borders. Then George Soros comes along, oh no, we got to take down the borders, we got to blur everybody together, we've got to just blend them all together so they have no idea who they are, and then they're going to be easier to control. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Nigel Farage is out there calling all of these people protesting Trump's immigration ban, and it's just for 90 days while they work out better vetting. But he's saying this is ridiculous when you look at how many terrorists got through these open borders, how many people Barack Obama actually deported himself, and it is hysteria. Now, Nigel Farage and Katie Hopkins are saying they want the same thing for Great Britain. And we're starting to see this all over Europe that has suffered greatly under this open borders policy. And again, we are not being racist here. What we're saying is every nation has a legitimate right to decide who does and does not come into the country, to make sure that those who are coming into the country are a benefit to our society and our economy, who are going to integrate, who will obey our laws. But with the wide open borders, we've got people coming on in who expect to live off the welfare system, to get free things, and just kick back and have the life of Riley. We have people coming in through these open borders who are not being vetted for highly contagious, dangerous diseases. We have diseases back in the United States of America that were considered eradicated only a decade ago. And, of course, there's a huge criminal element coming on in. Drug criminals, gang members, trying to bring their nefarious operations up here. And Donald Trump is right to say, we need some controls. And again, we need to counter this thing about it's a ban on Muslims. No, it isn't. It's a ban on anyone from these listed countries who are recognized hotbeds of terrorist activity. Now, as I mentioned before, Barack Obama kicked out more migrants than any U.S. president during his first term in office. During the second term in office, when everybody went to this New World Order globalist thing. And let's not forget, Bill Clinton deported the highest number on record in 2000. 1,800,000 aliens were kicked out of the country by Bill Clinton. You didn't hear the media screaming about it back then. When Bill Clinton did his State of the Union address about how he was going to crack down on out-of-control immigration, he got a standing ovation. But it looks like our corporate media is everything a Democrat does is good and everything a Republican does is bad. And that's their simple editorial guideline, apparently. Now, on Saturday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made a gesture where he said, Canada will welcome the Muslims that are being kicked out of the United States of America. And then it got a little bit embarrassing because the very next day, Sunday, there was an attack on a mosque, 6 dead, a lot more wounded. Originally, Reuters put out a tweet that 2 white supremacists had been arrested for the crime, and it picked up and went viral. Oh, Islamophobia, Islamophobia. And it turned out, no, in point of fact, that 2 white supremacists had not been arrested. In fact, the people that are being sought for this shooting are Salafists, who are like the really extreme, ultra-religious Muslims, the ones who were forming those Sharia law patrols over in Germany. So there's a little bit of egg on Trudeau's face over that one here. Now, apparently, U.S. Attorneys General from 15 states and the District of Columbia have censured President Donald Trump for this ban he put on the nationals of these 7 countries. Now, I think a lot of these attorneys generals are left over from the Clinton administration, because remember when Bill Clinton came on in, he fired every single U.S. Attorney General, U.S. Attorney across the country, replaced him with his own people, in order to control who was and was not being prosecuted. Now, de Blasio was being interviewed. Mayor de Blasio of New York was being interviewed by CNN's Jake Tapper, and basically said he thinks it's okay to shield undocumented drunk workers, or drunk drivers, rather, saying it's really a minor issue, and we're not going to get them deported over the fact that they're driving drunk on the roads. Well, if you're not a refugee and you're a legal American citizen and you get pulled over for drunk driving, what do you think happens to you? Now, apparently the corporate media, Bob Iger, Rupert Murdoch, Michael Bloomberg, and Bill Marriott are basically all getting together to wage a propaganda war on you, the American people, that the refugees are wonderful, the illegal immigrants are wonderful, Donald Trump is horrible human being, and all the rest of that. And I don't know how successful they're going to be, given the current image of the corporate media. Now, Reince Priebus is saying there may be more countries added to the list. And Spicer was out there saying this is not about race, it's not about religion, it's about protecting the American people from the wrath of all these countries that are angry with the United States for being bombed and drone struck and regime changed. And here's where it gets even weirder. The war of words between Mexico and Trump is ramping on up, where a Mexican official is out there saying that if Donald Trump tries to build the wall, Mexico will flood the U.S. with drugs and narcotics. They'll unleash the cartels. The government of Mexico will tell Mexico's drug cartels, whatever you're doing up to America, we will not interfere with. Go get them. Now, to me, that makes a greater case for the wall. But we're beginning to see that, yes, indeed, Mexico is a narcocracy. Their government is entirely corrupted by illegal drug trade and money laundering, just like our government has been for the last 30 years under the Clintons and the Bushes. Now, getting on back to George Soros, apparently Hungary's foreign minister, in an interview with Russia Today, is saying Soros-funded non-governmental organizations are trying to bring down the Hungarian government. George is up to his usual tricks. And now apparently Serbia is getting ready to come down on George Soros because he's been playing the same games over there. More and more it's becoming obvious that a great deal of the misery that we have seen around the world is authored by this one individual who thinks having billions of dollars gives him a right to treat planet Earth and all of its people like his own personal playthings. So, they're after him in Serbia now. People are starting to call him Darth Soros. So, Serbia, Hungary, what else is he out there? Russia has banned him. Macedonia is shutting him down. And apparently he's been caught doing something down in Malaysia as well, tinkering with them. Now, George Soros, this last election cycle, spent nearly $11 million supporting liberal district attorney candidates, 10 of whom won. George Soros financed Hillary Clinton's recount lawyer, Mark Elias. This guy's a real problem. He's a real troublemaker here. Remember, George Soros gave $650,000 to Black Lives Matter. And pro-abortion, he's pro-abortion. He gave nearly $90 million to these feminist anti-Trump protest groups. And he was directly connected financially with the D.C. Women's March, which wasn't about women's right. It was all pro-abortion. They didn't want to have any women who were pro-life join them. Now, we did a flashback story over from PJ Media where leaked documents reveal Soros funding to try and manipulate the federal elections. Where's the corporate media on this? They were out there screaming that Russia was tinkering with our elections with absolutely no proof. Here we have leaked funding documents from George Soros and his foundations to manipulate election laws in the United States. Soros was funding all of these lawsuits in all of these states to overturn voter ID laws. Why isn't the corporate media reporting on that? Why doesn't the corporate media report on Israel's tinkering with our politics? So it just gets completely out of control here. Now, Soros is now funding a PR effort and these protests to stop the refugee ban. And apparently, as we already know, Soros is funding Facebook's so-called fake news fact-checker, which is all about scrubbing anything from the Internet that is not compliant with official U.S. government policy. George Soros plans on donating $10 million to anti-hate groups this coming year. There's no clear definition of what he means by anti-hate. It can just be used as a label. Oh, you're saying bad things about George Soros. You're just being a hater. I sure hope he starts to run out of money real soon because he has caused so much damage. In fact, I would say George Soros has become the greatest argument in favor of socialism by showing what individuals with way too much money are capable of doing, the trouble they make. Now, the good news is it does look like it's stuttering. Story over at Sputnik News. There's a financial analyst, hedge fund manager, Mitch Fierstein, saying that the fact that Trump won this last election is a major roadblock to George Soros' plan to impose a new world order global government. And that's why everybody's in a panic. Soros was so close to his dream of a single golden throne of planet Earth he could almost taste it. And that's why he's reacting like a spoiled brat. He didn't get what he wanted, and he's going to spend all of his fortune trying to reverse the election, trying to keep things going down that road of global conquest. Now, Marine Le Pen is out there talking about these anti-Trump protests, saying that in France, they respect the results of the elections. When the election is over, everybody puts down the rancor, and they say, all right, this is our new direction for our country, let's work together. And we're not seeing that here. We're definitely seeing an entrenched liberal establishment and corporate media openly at war with the Trump administration, and for that matter, the independent media. Now, Congress, as promised, is dragging their heels on these approval of Trump's cabinet nominees. 13 of them have still not been confirmed. And we're into the second week of Trump's administration, meaning these agencies are technically running without any kind of leadership. Now, when Obama was first elected, he had 11 of his 15 cabinet positions filled after his first week. Trump has only 2. The behavior of our Congress, the behavior of our entire political system is shameful. They really are showing the world what a bunch of egomaniacal, spoiled brat children they are. Now, apparently Donald Trump has elevated his chief strategist, Steve Bannon, to the National Security Council. This is the big top one. And apparently he's asked some of the representatives from the intelligence agencies to stand down. Apparently he's not happy with the fact that they've been lying to him. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, Donald Trump is taking Chuck Schumer to task for what appear to be crocodile tears over the executive order. And we all need to remember that back in 2015, that very same Chuck Schumer was saying it might be necessary to have a refugee pause because they were dealing with all of this stuff. It's all about trying to find a way to go after Donald Trump. And apparently the governor of Washington State has come on out in a press conference and declared Donald Trump an enemy of the United States of America. I mean, these people are going to trigger a civil war the way they are going. It really is amazing. Now, Starbucks announced that they were going to hire 10,000 refugees and let their legal American citizen employees go. This has prompted an immediate boycott against Starbucks, because Americans do believe in Donald Trump's motto, putting America first. Now then, getting on back to corruption here. Do you remember Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, he has been a source of much funding, much partying, and much scandal regarding his taste in extremely young women. And he is being sued yet again, apparently for luring an underage girl into his elaborate sex trafficking enterprise by promising that he was going to use his wealth and connections to get her into a prestigious New York City college. And, of course, it didn't happen. And so there's another lawsuit pending there as well. It's somehow these individuals don't seem to learn anything. Or maybe just getting sued on a regular basis is part of the cost of having fun. Now, getting on over to the corporate media, they're still out there. Speaking of somebody who has never, ever learned from their past mistakes. The corporate media is still doing what they always do, making up all these stories. And apparently, Kellyanne Conway was talking with Chris Wallace. And Chris Wallace is out there saying, well, you know, I'm offended. I'm offended that Donald Trump says that we should just close our mouths. That's an attack on our right of free speech. And Kellyanne Conway says, no, what Trump is saying is you need to be reporting what's factual and accurate. And if you don't know the facts behind your story, then you should shut up rather than just guess and push liberal propaganda. And again, the track record of the corporate media is not very good. A lot of the corporate media have now been forced to issue retractions on many of the elements of their so-called Russia hacking stories. Remember when somebody was talking on C-SPAN and Russia Today appeared on it briefly, and the corporate media immediately went, oh, see, there's the Russian hackers. The Russians hacked C-SPAN. And C-SPAN said, no. Somebody made a goof on the router. It was an internal routing error. They just put the wrong feed on the wrong line. There was no hacking. And then they had the one about the Trump server connected to Russia, which was just handling normal business stuff. And, of course, the dossier about the prostitutes, that was a complete fake. And somehow the corporate media thinks that that's their right to do, to just lie to all of us. And what's really alarming is how the liberal media all over the world, not here in the United States of America because it's a felony, but we're seeing all these media talking heads around the world openly calling for President Trump's assassination. The latest one is form of a tweet put out by author and Sunday Times columnist India Knight, in which she publicly whines about the fact that the assassination of the American president is taking way too long for her liking. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And apparently she's calling him a moron, mad, needy. That's not journalism. That's propaganda. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with phone calls after these few words. Hello, America. Welcome back to the show. And before we take the phone calls, I want to finish up on all these liberal media stars around the world are openly calling for the assassination of President Trump. And it wasn't just this journalist Knight on Twitter. Apparently, the editor and publisher of the German newspaper Die Zeit, Josef Juff, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, basically saying that Trump should be assassinated in order to stop his anti-globalist agenda. They're just telling you right out what's going on here. It's globalists against nationalists. They want all of humanity trapped in a single government, so there's no choice to what you're doing. They want us all permanent debt slaves to a single global private central bank. That's what they have been working towards so hard. All right, let's take some phone calls. Fran in Washington State, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, nui nui, Michael.
Aloha, nui nui nui.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. No, I don't hear you. I don't hear you. I don't want to timeshare condo.
Okay, I'll try to be brief because everybody's breathing down your neck.
Yes.
Real quick, one quick. Free speech. Let's talk about free speech. And you, during the campaign, you were telling us that we've got to cuddle up to our Congress critters. And the only way we can do that from afar is put their phone numbers to their offices on speed dial on your phone. Mm-hmm. Because, here's one for you, if you are complacent at this time, then you are complicit.
That's a very good way of putting that. And if when you look at the sheer scale of the liberals, Clintons, George Soros, the corporate media, and everything, all of the globalists, they're in a panic between Trump's winning the election and Brexit. Their dreams of a single golden throne for planet Earth are evaporating, and they're reacting rather badly. They're not being very gracious losers.
Well, the one thing that's alarming me is there is a bill before Congress as we speak about making protest illegal. You can run them over, you know, any more than 10 people, you can break them up and kill them or whatever. We have got to get behind our Congress critters and say, don't you even think of it.
Yeah, I got to tell you, when I was a kid growing up in New England farming country, never did I dream I would see the United States deteriorate towards tyranny as bad as it has. Okay?
Yep, that's all I've got except for foolish stuff. So I know you're working hard and people are breathing down your throat. So that'll be all for me today.
All right, thanks an awful lot, Fran. We're going to switch over to Joe in Oklahoma. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How are you, Michael? Listened to Ralph Winterroad on RBN last night, and he brought up this subject of treason. And it seems, if I understood him correctly, in 1803 or 13, one or the other, the United States Supreme Court ruled that, paraphrasing as best I can, that if a public official fails to enforce statute or law, and with impunity, they are guilty of treason. That's the United States Supreme Court ruling.
I would want to see the actual ruling on that, because treason, in my understanding, relates to aid and comfort to an enemy in time of war. But certainly this blatant...
I would say that these mayors are certainly aiding the enemy.
Well, that I would agree with, especially if some of them are, in fact, potential terrorists. And we're in a war on terror, and all of these mayors of sanctuary cities and sanctuary states and everything, yeah, they're giving aid and comfort to enemies of the United States of America in time of war. And
one could review those transcripts from Ralph Winterroad's program yesterday evening and find it, his site.
All right, I'll definitely take a look for that. Anything else?
You do a good job. I always enjoy listening to you. You're doing a great service, man.
Thank you very much for those kind words. We're going to switch over to George in Texas. Aloha, George. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike?
Doing fine.
Yes. The thing is, I'm hearing a lot of people claim they supported Trump and he's not moving fast enough and all that stuff.
He's moving very fast. You know, in fact, I am thinking maybe he's moving a little too fast. But I think he's trying to get as much done as he can and not give the obstructors in Congress enough time to mount any kind of a pushback.
Well, also, too, it's more like in every executive action, everything has to be constitutionally tight and within executing the laws of Congress, too. Because that's all a president could do is execute Congress, and he's using existing law. But, you know, one thing I do say about the refugees where he does have to go one step further is he got a lot of these refugees coming in that have diseases that are not really that known in Western countries, but are known like leprosy or Chagas disease.
Yep.
I really think there needs to be a quarantine, a lockdown on these people, keep them away from the population.
There should be. I mean, Ellis Island did that. That's why Ellis Island was on that island in the middle of New York Harbor, was to act as a quarantine zone. We have the same thing right here in Hawaii. If you look outside Honolulu, there's an area called Sand Island, which is now mostly a shipping terminal, but back during the missionary and whaling days, that was a quarantine facility, because if a ship showed up at the harbor flying the flag of an onboard pestilence, they were told to land on Sand Island, food and everything would be sent across, and they would just simply wait until everybody was either over the illness or dead before they'd be allowed to set foot on Hawaii. And in the end, it didn't really work, because much of the indigenous Hawaiian population was absolutely wiped out by measles. They were simply not prepared for it. And that, in turn, is what led to all the plantation owners importing workers from China and Japan and the Philippines, which has created our, multicultural society that we have today.
Because I'm hearing, like in Dallas, you got leprosy, Chagas disease, and a bunch of other diseases that are known
bubonic
for
plague. Yeah, there are now cases of bubonic plague. Drug-resistant tuberculosis is now inside the United States of America. And the people behind this globalist push, they don't care about individuals' health. They just want to own everybody, and they're perfectly willing to see 10, 15, maybe 30% of the population die off. In fact, many of them want that to happen. They want to be fewer humans on planet Earth, so there's more for them.
I wouldn't mind using the military to sort of like lock down where these refugee centers are, where they're we say congregating, and so like keep them away from the rest of the population. Find out who's been exposed, have them checked, and before send them back, yes, treat them, but send them back after that. Send them back. Like I say,
it's a good idea, but short of a declaration of a national emergency, posse comitatus is going to apply. But Trump could use the National Guard to do that. But basically, these people should not have been allowed into the United States carrying these diseases to begin with. They should have been stopped at the border. And, everybody's out there screaming that Trump is doing all these horrible things. But as you pointed out correctly in the phone call, Trump is using existing U.S. laws. What has been happening over the last 4-6 years is everybody just got into this idea that, well, we're not enforcing those laws anymore. And all Trump is saying as President of the United States is, you will enforce the law of the land. And that's what everybody's got their knickers in a twist over.
Well, the thing is, I'm hoping they confirm Jeff Sessions real quick, because the reason why they're probably not arresting Soros or going after him, because they ain't got an attorney general yet.
Well, we certainly need somebody that, Soros is just, there was a while back a movie with Michael Caine in it called $1 Billion Brain. And the storyline was about this Texas oil billionaire who just decided he was going to start World War with Russia all on his own and was going to spend his own money to do it. And he's thankfully thwarted at the end. I think Ed Begley played that billionaire, but Soros just reminds me of the same one. He's got a lot of money, thinks that allows him to play God with the planet, and he's dangerous. Look at how much destruction and death he has already caused in his quest for a one-world government.
Because I really think we need to pressure Trump and pressure Congress. Shut down George Soros, like you mentioned, I think, weeks ago. Use the RICO statutes, freeze his assets, where he can't drain his swamp.
Yes,
basically.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I'm going to let you move on to other callers, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Ernest in Reno. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. First of all, I just want to, on that last caller, the comment that Georgia Guidestones, they're calling for a 500 million population. So if that's, if that's the case, I think they want a lot more of us gone than we like.
Yeah, no, I know about the Georgia Guidestones, and it's one of these arcane things. Nobody's really sure who is behind it. But, I mean, Bill Gates is out there calling for global depopulation on a massive scale and the use of vaccines to do it. Yeah, because, he's already made his money off of all you human beings. He doesn't want you around anymore. And
it's like the feudal system. The serfs just take care of the elite. That's basically what they want to go back to.
That's what all this neoliberalism is all about. It's a return. In fact, we ought to call it neo-feudalism. And is the direction they're heading.
Yeah. Mike, the thing is, though, my call was that about if there is to come a division that's going to lead to a civil war in this country, and maybe even the Western world, it's going to be, the root is going to be based on the value system of an older generation that's diminishing based on absolute values against the younger generation coming up that's going to dominate within the next 10, 15 years. And they were conditioned as relativist-minded. And
yeah, that's they've been brainwashed by the school system here. That's why they can't get any jobs.
Exactly. And they have no value system. So they have nothing no standard to really be able, you can't reason with them because they have nothing to reason with.
Yes.
The only thing that they have is you can't, anybody that talks about absolute values, you're telling me what to do. You're not the boss of me. It's a rebellion root is what these people have in their minds. And that's why, I don't like, this.
I think it's more accurate. I think it's more accurate to see that the younger generation has been indoctrinated as a personality cult. I mean, Hillary Clinton built her entire campaign around identity politics and victimization, and it is a classic personality cult where the hero figure being worshipped can never do any wrong, and anybody who is opposed to the hero figure can never be doing any right. It's the same thing you see surrounding David Miscavige over at the Scientologists. And some of the worst, most brutal tyrants in history were supported by personality cults. People who just refused to see that anything was wrong with their system. And it's a very, very powerful tool that tyrants like to use. But there is a pushback now, and we're even seeing more and more young people, especially those who got lured into college. They got their heads filled with a lot of nonsense in college. They're now out of college, unable to pay those student loans, and realizing they didn't learn anything in college that actually helps them in the real world. All they learned in college was slogans and what to believe in and human-caused global warming, and none of which actually translates to any kind of a decent livelihood. We're going to have another lost generation coming out of this mess.
Right, and the thing about it is that these people, if we have enough of those young people that can actually hold on to, they have to understand, by the time you're 7 years old, the psychologist or psychiatrist say that your basic character and personality and nature has been established, and they were taught to stifle that, what they felt as being that young, and if they can at least retain enough of that, then we might have a chance, the younger generation might have a chance. But if not, you're going to have all these people that the end justifies the means. They're right, and they don't want to hear it. That's their mindset, their relativist mindset. People.
Well, as I mentioned before, from an experience we had with somebody who used to be a friend, back in the 60s and 70s, liberalism really did embody the intellectual elites of our society. But since then, it's become a branding label where anybody who's insecure about their intelligence and education simply says, I'm a liberal, hence by default, I'm an intellectual elite. And in point of fact, they're not intellectual elites. If anything, they're arrogant in their ignorance. And that, too, is part of a personality cult where, again, you cannot see the indications that something is going wrong around you. Now, as far as psychiatrists saying that your personality and belief structure is set at age 7, that may be true to an extent, but we know that people who are far older than 7 have a crisis of conscience. They lose their faith. I certainly did much later in life. And so I think people are capable of change as long as we can get them to open their eyes and see the world as it really is, not as they dream it of being somewhere down the road.
You know, Mike, let me make this last point here. A true liberal, like back in the early days, they still based their value system on the absolute values, but they had a lot of tolerance. They fell over for tolerance, whereas now these people, they don't go by that value system, so they don't have
No,
that.
you're supposed to be tolerant of them and their group, while they're just totally intolerant of any other point of view. And again, that double standard is going to be their undoing here.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll see. We got about, I would say, 10 years before we see this dominant generation come up and see what happens.
Well, 10 years is a long time to shift their consciousness and their awareness here. All right, we're going to let you go here, and we're going to start with Joey in New Jersey. Aloha, what's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, this is Joey Limo. I send you emails. What's with Chuck Schumer with his fake tears?
Well, he's very much supporting the pro-immigration platform, and I'd like to know how much Schumer himself has profited, or benefited rather, from George Soros' Open Society Foundation. Anyway, Joey, sorry to do this to you, but we just hit a commercial break and we need to let you go. We'll be back with more news after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to close the phone lines for a little while here because I got some news I need to talk about. Now, as you know, there was this riot against Trump's Muslim ban up in Portland, Oregon. And one more time, the phrase Muslim ban is a creation of the corporate media and the liberal political establishment. If you read the actual executive order, the word Muslim does not appear anywhere in it. What Trump has done is impose travel restrictions on specific countries known to be hotbeds of terrorist activity and known to hate the United States of America because the United States has been bombing and drone striking and regime changing these countries over the last several years. So they're not going to be entirely cheerful about us. And it's a reasonable precaution to say we are going to be very careful about allowing individuals from these areas into our country. And 90 days from now, they're going to have a new vetting system in place. So down in Los Angeles International Airport, there's been another protest, probably ginned up by one of these Soros NGOs. 20,000 social justice warriors protesting Donald Trump at Los Angeles International Airport. And here is where they stepped in it, because they're also out there shouting demands for Islamic and Sharia law to be adopted in the United States of America. Now, here is where public image becomes important. If you go back to the end of World War II, you will find out that these covert regime changes carried out by the U.S. government only succeed about half the time. They're batting 500. And for one of these manufactured color revolutions, Maidans, whatever you're going to call them, to succeed, the general population must sympathize with and identify with that group that is trying to basically bring down the government and replace it. But if you're looking at how these individuals are behaving, have been behaving, it's not going to generate popular support. It's not going to generate sympathy. Nobody's going to identify with them and say, oh, we feel sorry for them. If anything, the anger is building in the other way. Now, getting on to the war zones, and there's a lot going on here. As you know, Donald Trump wanted to set up safe zones in Syria for the civilians. It was spun by the corporate media as a call for U.S. military intervention, but apparently cooler heads have prevailed. And Sergei Lavrov is saying that with his discussions with Trump And with Assad, Damascus might agree to simply demarking areas where the civilians can be kept away from the conflict. So it may actually be happening. Now, Hawaii's Tulsi Gabbard, as you know, about 2 weeks ago, did a privately funded fact-finding trip to Syria. And she came back saying there are no moderate rebels. They're all acting like terrorists, and they are being supported by the United States of America. More about this when we come back to the station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. The phone lines are closed at the moment because I got some news I need to get through. We're talking about Hawaii's congressperson, Tulsi Gabbard, who a couple of weeks ago went on a privately funded fact-finding trip with Dennis Kucinich. And she came on back and she said there are no moderate rebels. They are all committing war crimes. They're killing civilians. They're behaving like terrorists. And they are still being supported covertly by the United States government. Now, I imagine that this is supplies that were in the pipeline up until Donald Trump became president, because he doesn't seem all that hot and bothered about going after Assad. In fact, he's trying to tone things down there. Needless to say, in classic hysterical liberal establishment politics, nobody wants to talk about what Tulsi Gabbard actually found. It's all constant attack the messenger. And Gabbard is under serious criticism. She's being accused of legitimizing a tyrant and all kinds of other things. But Kucinich is saying, yeah, what we found is what we found. And we're telling you the truth, because we actually went out there to see what was going on rather than sit on our rear ends and wait for the corporate media to fill our head full of garbage. So everybody is rallying around Tulsi Gabbard because she's doing the job that a member of Congress is supposed to do on those fact-finding trips. Find out what's really going on. Because we know government will lie. We know corporate media will lie. Now, over in Yemen, a couple of things are going on. First of all, a United Nations panel investigating the airstrikes by the Saudis in Yemen, which have killed at least 292 civilians, are saying there's no legitimate military objective. It's not like they were aiming at a missile site and missed. These were deliberate attacks on peaceful targets. And the United Nations is now saying these Saudi strikes in Yemen, acting as a proxy for the U.S. government, may constitute war crimes. Now, the Saudi attacks on civilians in Yemen are all about the same thing that Adolf Hitler's use of the V-1 buzz bomb and the V-2 ballistic missile against the civilians of Great Britain. To terrorize the civilian population into abandoning their government and accepting foreign rule. And that's exactly what's being repeated here. Because the people of Yemen are trying to kick out the foreign rule that was imposed on them, and they want to go back to their own government. And that's why they're being punished from the air in a terror campaign. But there's been an interesting development, because apparently 2 Houthis in a rowboat wearing sandals took out a 377-foot, 2,600-ton French-built Saudi-operated frigate with a crew of 176 officers and sailors aboard. The missile they used was so small you can't even see it in the video of the incident, which we have on the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com. When you're a foreign invader, you're there for the money. When you're up against a population that is fighting for their homes, their lands, and their loved ones within eyesight, they have a tremendous advantage in terms of morale. And these 2 Houthis just proved it. Now, Donald Trump, as you know, had a phone call with Vladimir Putin. The indications are now he is going to lift the sanctions against Russia. The ordinary people of Europe are delighted because they had suffered under these sanctions. And the globalists are out there saying, no, 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 you've got to go on. And Donald Trump has gone on the attack against Songbird McCain and Lindsey Graham, who are still out there saying, we've got to confront Russia, we've got to confront Russia. All right, John and Lindsey, here's your rifles. Here's your parachute. Go have fun. And Donald Trump says we need to focus on ISIS, not starting World War III. So McCain and Graham are out there fuming and saying, how dare the president not make war on the people we've decided to make war on. Speaking of making war, remember when this whole Maidan in Kiev, which was apparently sponsored mostly by the United States, came on down, a big selling point in the corporate media was Russia's presence in Ukraine and Russia's presence in Crimea. Well, apparently Ukraine's prosecutor unintentionally released a letter written by President Viktor Yanukovych inviting Russia to help stabilize the country that was headed toward civil war. In other words, Ukraine's legitimate government asked Russia for help, the same way Syria did. Certainly, Ukraine's legitimate government did not invite the United States and Western powers to come on in, overthrow the government, and impose President Chocolate on them here. All right, we're going to do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And there we are. Let's do this. Too many buttons, too many switches here. Rand Paul has had a discussion with Nikki Haley on this idea of going to war without congressional approval. And, of course, our Constitution was written so that no president could just haul off and say, I feel like invading Canada today. And Congress, with all of these pre-approvals for use of force, is abandoning its oversight responsibilities. They're basically saying, yeah, go ahead. And that seems to be the case with House Joint Resolution 10, which was just introduced. And this is basically a bill to pre-authorize President Trump to use military force against Iran if they suspect that Iran is obtaining or building nuclear weapons. We're back to that Iranian nukes. Saddam's nukes didn't exist. There's no evidence that Iran is having a nuclear program, although one could hardly blame them with all this talk of invasion and breaking them up. But you need to remember your history. Iran has not initiated a war of conquest against another country in over 200 years. And certainly not since the 1979 revolution that kicked out the U.S. puppet ruler, the Shah. It's not in their nature. They just want to be left alone. But the central bankers want to get rid of Iran's public bank. The U.S. wants Iran's oil sold only for U.S. dollars. Israel wants Iran broken up into little tiny pieces that can be bullied and pushed around. They're just trying to figure an excuse that you, the American people, will buy. And so they're going back to, oh, nuclear weapons, nuclear weapons. But every time they say it, that's what they said about Saddam Hussein in Iraq. And there weren't any. There weren't any. Now, as you know, we just recently had National Holocaust Remembrance Day. And by the way, somebody wrote in and said, do you realize how weird it is that the Holocaust is the only event in history that you can be jailed for asking questions about? You can ask questions about the Apollo moon landings. You can ask questions about the sinking of the Titanic or the Lusitania or Spanish mine in Havana Harbor and everything like that. This one area, you can be thrown in jail for asking a question. And that right there tells you somebody is protecting a terrible, terrible secret. So Donald Trump came on out with a statement for Holocaust Remembrance Day talking about the innocent victims. And, of course, Israel immediately went ballistic. No, no, this is the Jews, and you're supposed to talk about anti-Semitism. And the Trump administration is saying, we had the statement the way we did because there have been many genocides against many people. And you've got the ADL, and you've got Abe Foxman, who used to be in charge of the ADL, and AIPAC and Israel are out there screaming that, no, no, anytime you talk about the Holocaust, it's only about the Jews. You know, you've got to link the two forever. Now, the historical reality is Jews were not the only occupants of those Nazi slave labor camps. In fact, they were not even the majority. They amounted to just about 10% of the population of these prison factories. The Germans made prison workers from the gays, gypsies, the mentally impaired, real criminals, Freemasons, Social Democrats, Communists, and Anarchists. They had that whole thing of all the different color code triangles that you wore. Anybody that the Nazis felt was an inferior race or political point of view got thrown into those prison factories to make goods for the Nazi army. Now, Israel likes to monopolize the Holocaust for political gain and make it look like it was just targeted against them, but that simply is not reality. Now then, over at Desert Peace, Gilad Atzmon, rather, he came on out and basically said it was kind of interesting to see Donald Trump stick by his guns regarding the Holocaust statement, saying, you know, we're taking into account all those who suffered. And Israel likes to protect that image that only Jews were being targeted for those slave labor camps, because ultra-progressive Jackie Walker was suspended from the Labor Party a few months ago for pointing out that the Holocaust Memorial Day was not wide-ranging enough to include other people who were victims of the Nazis and other genocides. Now, obviously, we all agree genocide is wrong, and we all agree that slave labor is wrong. But the whole story of World War II has been hijacked by Israel's propagandists for political gain. And they probably should have just kept their mouths shut, because their complaints about Donald Trump not describing the Holocaust as a Jews-only exclusive club has gone viral around the net, and more people are starting to look into the real history of World War II and whether any of this propaganda we've been fed about Israel really stands up to scrutiny, and most of it doesn't. Now, a couple of weeks ago, a story broke on how Britain had test-fired a Trident missile in June of 2016, and it had veered off course towards the United States. Now, it was a test, and they had range safety, and they brought it down without any problems, and the U.S. asked Great Britain to keep this all hushed up. Now, apparently, as it turns out, to go along with the Gerald R. Ford and the Zumwalt and the Independence-class littoral combat ships and the Freedom-class littoral combat ships and the F-22 and the F-35, apparently the Trident system has a known problem with its navigation systems. And since the Trident missile was deployed out there, the U.S. government has had to spend $1.76 billion with a B trying to refit and modify these missiles so they'll actually go in the direction they're supposed to. Another reason not to have a nuclear war, that thing could come right back on your own head. Meanwhile, a very telling story coming, well, it's a YouTube video. Potential foreign buyers drooling over the newest MiG-35 jet. Apparently, the arms market around the world, which has been a big part of the U.S. economy, it's starting to shift away because of all these problems with U.S. designed and built weapon systems, which are bloated, expensive, prone to failure. And all of a sudden, Russia's coming on out with their latest generation aircraft that are just amazing performers. And the MiG-35 will eventually have an air-to-air laser cannon. No more having to lead the target or anything like that. Just get them in the pip, punch a hole. I'll bet this is going to keep Lockheed Martin up late. So let's look at some economic news. One of the wonderful things that happens if you're a refugee coming to the United States and you're on public assistance, you're living on welfare, the U.S. government will give you a loan of $15,000 to start a business. And apparently, nobody is keeping track of how many of these loans default Apparently it's a number they feel that you, the taxpayer who's covering all of this, don't need to know. And Judicial Watch is digging into this and saying that they've found so many defaults. It's a huge loss for the American economy and the American taxpayer. These refugees are getting a better deal from the U.S. government than the legal citizens. All right, let's grab a phone call. Dean in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How's it going? I'm not sure I'm on the right topic because I usually listen on delay, but I just wanted to bring up the Marie Le Pen issue real quick. She is being demonized right and left, and reading the news is just a complete repeat of everything they were doing with Trump. She's leading in the polls. She has all the support. She has all the momentum. But even if she wins, in a head-to-head against this person, a head-to-head against this socialist, she's going to get crushed 60-40, 75-25. It's just a repeat all over again, and telling us that she can't win. It's just getting all silly. Yeah,
and at this point the world is waking up to realize that the corporate media is completely untrustworthy. And just go on out, vote for your favorite candidate, and hopefully you'll have an honest election with an honest result. But Marine Le Pen is very much opposed to this global government New World Order. She has seen what the European Union has done to Europe, and it's been nothing but problems for the European people. It's a sweet deal for the bankers and for the people in Brussels, but for everybody else, it's been a miserable, miserable time. And her success in the polls is because she's openly talking about a Frexit.
Yeah, and they're even trying to polarize her against Trump in these articles that are made. Like, she doesn't agree with Trump on climate change. Jeremy Corbyn from the EU is demonizing Trump as well. It's blah blah blah. It's just I wish there was a more direct route that the patriots in America could do to encourage the younger millennials in France to route the same type of support. But they're living through it right now. The kind of refugee crisis we're trying to prevent in America, I have to imagine the millennials are walking through the streets day to day, seeing it on their streets and in their communities, that this has to be resisted immediately.
Well, unfortunately, following the state of emergency, following that false flag at Charlie Hebdo, the current French government has imposed severe restrictions on freedom of speech, and they're trying to create a nation in which everybody is forced to be dependent on the corporate media and government statements, and nobody's allowed to share anything with anybody else. It's still going to happen. You know, the Soviet citizens did it with fax machines. Once a population understands they're being lied to, it's only a matter of time before that system comes crashing down.
Did you see Snowden yet, Mike?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's pretty good. That Nicolas Cage character, who's the cryptographer, or basically the computer expert on old school computers there.
Yep.
It's funny, he was working on that machine that was the one that came after the one they made the big movie about recently. But he was mentioning how that was the one that they were the computer that he was working on that Snowden recognized was the one that they were using to send messages in the underground in Russia at the time, so I thought that was funny. Also, on a side note, while you mentioned it, it just seems like South Park is always a decade ahead of all of these issues. I mean, the two-part episode they made about showing Muhammad's face was hilarious and hit it right on point, considering they had already showed Muhammad's face in the years before, and even all of their commentary on political correctness and not offending people, starting with the first Christmas episode of South Park 20 years ago.
Yes.
They've been so ahead of the trend for political correctness, for everything we're seeing today, and even the last season, making fun of people hating the trolls and people, all the snowflakes and the millennials. It just really on point. So sorry to jump around, but I just definitely wanted to bring up the Marie Le Pen issue. We're going to be rooting for her and taking all of our countries back, really.
Yeah, we're going to be rooting for all the nationalists because that's what it is. The globalists almost got their dream, and now the world is standing up and pushing back and saying we don't want to be part of a one-world government that leaves us no other option for deciding how we're going to live our lives. And so there is a huge pushback, and I said more than a year ago, this rush to create a global government has created a political climate that could lead to a global revolution. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen in the long run. All right, well, Dean, we're going to let you go. We've got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back with more news and another phone call after these few words. And aloha. America, welcome back to the show here. We're going to take one more phone call, then we're going to close the lines again for a little bit. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, over the weekend, I saw HBO was playing a movie several times called Ice Age Collision Course, the animation movie.
Yeah, I love it.
And I was just thinking about that. You know, talk about the indoctrination process, how it really works. And it starts very, very young in preschool, and every year after that, by the time you're a senior in high school, you will be convinced that this hoax is real and that you're the cause of all this. And, of course, you'll have to pay up. But it's amazing how young they start. And I just want to throw that at you.
Well, yeah, Hollywood, of course, is liberal. And they're going to, try and capitalize on whatever is the latest liberal fashion. And the current fashion is human-caused global warming, although it's rapidly going out of fashion. But that is why the U.S. government has tried to maintain such tight control over film and television production in this country, because of how powerful an influence it can be. And it's always been that way. Steve, please don't hang up the phone, because Mike in our control room wants to talk to you about something. And we're going to move on here to some of the economic news here. Now, as you know, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is at 20,000, and the cheerleaders are out in their gold lame cheerleading outfits going, go Dow, higher, higher, give me a D, give me, you know. However, the companies that make up the Dow Jones Industrial Average, they don't average all of the companies in the stock market. They pick about 2 dozen that they see as good performing, and they calculate the Dow Jones Industrial Average from that selected list of public corporations. But unfortunately, those corporations on that list are reporting the worst revenues since 2010. And that right there tells us that the stock market has been manipulated from 2010 all the way through to the current moment. The plunge protection team, the hocus pocus, the rigging, it's all an illusion. It's all smoke and mirrors. Now then, over in Europe, at this point we've reached a stage where the collapse of the European Union is no longer an if, it's a when. They can't hold it together. Guy Verhofstadt, former Prime Minister of Belgium, and he now heads the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe in the EU Parliament, basically described Brexit as rats leaving a sinking ship. But he's basically saying there are so many of the European Union member nations getting ready to leave, whether it's the Frexit, the Grexit, the Gexit. It's been a disaster. And so now they're saying, what will replace the European Union? They don't want it to just stop. They're already trying to cook up some other kind of a alliance that will lock all those European nations together into a single bloc as a stepping stone to the New World Order. And I have an idea. How about we let Europe go back to being just Europe? Because it worked out pretty fine for several centuries that way, ignoring a few wars along the way. But it's time for the globalists to understand they're not going to get what they want. And all they can do by continuing is to cause a lot of bloodshed and hardship for the people of planet Earth. Not that they care, but that's where we are on that. The PC people are back out in force. Apparently, the British Medical Association is saying that you should never call a pregnant woman an expectant mother because it will offend the transgender people. Instead, you should say pregnant people. Doesn't the British Medical Association actually have more important things to be doing, like curing diseases, finding out if vaccines are causing harm or not, rather than go on out and say, don't call an expectant mother an expectant mother. It'll hurt the transgenders. It's ridiculous. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to some of the news here, headlines are coming on in here. Apparently, the Illinois Attorney General has filed a request to immediately halt state workers' pay. And apparently, Lisa Madigan, Democrat, is trying to force the Illinois legislature and the Republican Governor Bruce Rauner to adopt a new austerity budget by threatening a de facto government shutdown. Now, I don't know the laws in Illinois, but I don't think the Attorney General has the authority to deny the pay to the state workers. And certainly the state workers are not going to be happy with that at all. Now, last week we were talking about yet another retailer is in serious trouble, Wet Seal, and they have announced they are closing all 171 of their stores because nobody has money out there. Now, the retailers are out there trying to blame online shopping and, oh, we got to tax it, and we got to penalize it, and we've got to make it more attractive to come back to the retail brick-and-mortar stores. And I'm going to share a little insight with you, and I've mentioned this before. I prefer going to a shopping mall to shopping online because I want to see the product that I am thinking about buying. I want to judge its quality for myself, not go through a photo. And I want instant gratification. That's a big part of the retail experience. You go on in, you buy a coffee maker. You pay the money, you take your coffee maker home, everybody's happy. And where the retailers kind of missed it was in their quest for more profitability, they started closing out selection. You go into a store and they've got whatever they think is going to sell that season, and they push it at you, and that instant gratification isn't there. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into the local Best Buy, which is the only electronics place left in the neighborhood, and I'll say, I want XYZ, and they'll say, well, we don't keep it in stock, but we can order it for you. And I can say, I can order it online. The whole point of a brick-and-mortar store is you go on in with your money, you buy what you want, you go home. And modern retail has kind of lost a lot of that. And the other hard reality is that because of all the offshoring and automation that's been going on these last several years, the American people don't have a lot of money to spend. Back in 2008, when that mortgage-backed security fraud imploded, everything the U.S. government did was exactly opposite of what would have saved the situation. Instead, they came up with this idea of TARP and bailout. We're going to take trillions of dollars from the American people. We're going to give it to the bankers who made this mess so the bankers can loan it back to the American people at interest, to recapitalize the banks, or whatever euphemism they wanted to use. Now, if they'd done the opposite, if they'd gone to all of these financial institutions who were caught up in this mortgage-backed security fraud and taken their money and sent it back to the American people who were being cheated, nobody would have missed a mortgage payment. There wouldn't have been a real estate crisis. Nobody would have missed a credit card payment. There wouldn't have been a credit crisis. People would have gone down to the shopping malls and buy products, hopefully made in the United States of America. There wouldn't have been a retail crisis. People would have bought new cars. We wouldn't have had to bail out the automotive corporations. Everything they did was great for the bankers and themselves and lousy for the American people. And that's why so many applauded Donald Trump's inauguration speech when he got up there and said, the political class are profiting at your expense. And he's absolutely, absolutely right. Now, over in Germany, they have passed all these draconian laws to try and conceal from the German people what's going on with the refugee crisis. Merkel's government has passed laws saying that if there is a sexual assault or some kind of a crime, the German media is now forbidden to mention if it is from a refugee. And so we're looking at this article from Investment Watch blog, how the migrants are scamming the German welfare systems. And the politicians are covering it up. They're not even trying to stop it. They're just trying to keep it from being seen. Because the world is pushing back on this idea that we're all going to just blend into each other's countries and sing around the campfire holding hands and singing Kumbaya. give each other a big, wet, sloppy kiss. It hasn't worked. Remember, migration is a filtering mechanism. We're not getting the best of the people from places like Syria. We're getting those who couldn't make it in their own country. We're getting those who are fleeing prosecution. We're getting those who decided to leave rather than get involved in the conflict. That's why so many of these refugees are young, military-aged males. They don't want to fight. Now, Paul Joseph Watson has a new article out commenting on the fact that these so-called social justice warriors are now resorting to violence on a daily basis. They're resorting to violence in pursuit of a political goal. Enter the brown shirts. That's what these people are behaving like. And Paul Joseph Watson is saying the social justice warriors are domestic terrorists. So were the brown shirts. Now, we're just now getting word that the judge who partially blocked Trump's immigration ban, which is being ignored by the customs workers who are going along with the executive order, to nobody's surprise, it turns out he's good buddies with Clinton and Obama. And I think we need to take a very good look at our federal court system, because the way it's supposed to work is when you bring a lawsuit in, you are assigned a judge at random. And yet we're seeing way too many of these lawsuits wind up in the courts of judges who are beholden to the parties involved. And I'll give you a good example, was Larry Klayman. When he was down there in Florida, he had an ironclad, open and shut RICO case against the Clinton Foundation. And for some reason, it was assigned to a Clinton-appointed judge who threw the case out of court without even looking at the merits. And we're seeing more of the same thing here. All right, so let's take a moment to talk about human-caused global warming. And it's just all over the place here. In the Times of India, they are warning that over 100 villages in Lahore have been covered in deep snow, and people should stay away because there is an avalanche danger. It's a serious, serious issue over there. Now, up in Vail, Colorado, they're barely able to stay in front of all the snow that's coming on down. And they're saying right now they're trying to prioritize keeping the roads passable, and the fine-tuning, getting rid of the piles, it's going to have to wait. A lot of these places are not adequately prepared to deal with the hard winter because over the last several years, the corporate media has been saying, oh, snowfall's a thing of the past. It'll be a mild winter. It's human-caused global warming. You're not going to have to deal with that stuff anymore. So these financially strapped city councils, county seats, and so forth are saying, well, you know, Al Gore is telling us we're not going to have a lot of snow, so we don't need to buy as many snow plows or rent as many snow plows. We don't need to stockpile as much road grit. And they're not prepared. And we're hearing from a lot of these communities, they have already gone through their allocated budget and resources for snow removal, and it's still January. Now, down in Southern California, they're issuing avalanche warnings there around the area around Mount Baldy. And apparently 2 hikers got caught in a 3,000-foot avalanche, and they had to be rescued by helicopter. Now, over in New Mexico, they've got a town there, Chama, has received almost 6 feet of snow this month, and the month is not quite over yet, and it is the snowiest January in New Mexico, in Chama, New Mexico, in a century. And still the Al Gore and George Soros and Elon Musk are out there saying, oh, it's human-caused global warming. We need a carbon tax. We've got to force you to buy carbon credits. Really, it's a horrible, horrible thing. Right now, there are 24 states in the United States with vaccine bills that restrict your right to refuse. They're taking away all the exemptions, religious, whatever. You will buy and stick this stuff into your kid's arm. We're being treated like farm animals. Farm animals don't get to refuse those hormone shots that they're being given. Because it's big business. Now remember, the other day we were reporting on how the CDC, which has faked a report that claims there is no link between vaccines and autism. It turns out the CDC itself owns over 20 vaccine patents. The CDC sells $4 billion worth of vaccines every year, all by itself. Can you trust their objectivity and honesty with that much money on the line? Now, over in the Chicago Tribune, they've quoted Baylor College of Medicine professionals who are out there just absolutely appalled that Donald Trump is going to investigate the safety of vaccines. It's a horrible thing. He's obviously a threat to science. Well, no, he's a threat to the money. Because Baylor College has a long and documented record of accepting money from the pharmaceutical industry. Follow the money. That's what it is all about. And one more time, if you have not seen it, the documentary Vaxxed, they're trying so hard to keep you from seeing this. It was yanked from the Tribeca Film Festival. It was yanked from the Houston International Film Festival. It was just yanked from another festival in London, or a screening in London. They don't want you to see this, which is the reason why you should. Now, you can buy this DVD on Amazon. You can also watch it as a pay-per-view on Amazon Live, and it is now also available on eBay. This is something that you should have in your permanent library. Because the orthodox medical establishment, the medical industrial complex, is treating you like herd animals. I'm going to stick a needle in you and we're going to get money from you. And that's it. That's the beginning and the end of it. Our health system stopped being about health back during the Nixon administration, and it became all about being another profit center. That's how the government and corporate leaders see you, as just a herd of human animals to be profited from, to be harvested for work and wealth. And that's it. It's the beginning and end of it right there. Now, we are getting word that there is a new strain of bird flu spreading across Europe and Asia. Poultry farmers are having to destroy millions of infected birds, and now there's concern that it may reach the United States. And my first question would be, has anybody been short-selling poultry stocks around the world for the last few months? Because we know that George Soros got his wealth short-selling. He always seems to know when an industry or a corporation is going to hit some kind of a major, major problem. And remember, this is a guy who not only helped the Nazis find fellow Jews, admitted on television he feels no remorse for it whatsoever. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Jeff in Minnesota. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, there's a story where in Aberdeen, North Dakota, where a lot of immigrants are being recruited to work in the meat plants. One 39-year-old man got there, and within a day or two of checking in the hotel, was wandering around the neighborhood and came across a 16-year-old girl sitting on the bench outside the group home. And she has only two things she can talk about, what she wants to eat and her name. And this guy was speed dating her and putting his hands up all over her. And, well, he was convicted, and he was supposed to be sentenced today. And late news is, and of course, the major media over in North Dakota doesn't want to talk about the story. But it just says now that he's going to be sentenced in April. We're going to move it down, kick the can down the road.
Okay, this is Orangeburg, you said.
No, this is Aberdeen, North Dakota.
Okay, well, there's another one that's just come down that we're looking at. Yeah, we're seeing this all over Europe, and everybody who says, you know, you're resisting the refugees, you're being racist. Well, it's not like the behavior of most of those refugees are helping the situation. Again, if they were coming on in to these countries in Europe and they were integrating and they were behaving themselves, I don't think there'd be an issue. But these refugees are pouring on in. They're straining the economies of these host countries. They're getting all this special advantages because they're refugees, and then they run out and they demand Sharia law, and they riot and protest. They attack Christians. They attack women. Again, like I said, you've got to have popular support for these things to happen, and their behavior is definitely not going to build popular support for them to be there.
Now, here's two stories from Minneapolis, right?
Yeah.
Just last Thursday night, refugee Uber driver in uptown Minnesota by the lakes shot his customer in the stomach in front of a bar. I don't know what happened there. And then earlier last week, there was 3 Somali 18-year-olds that were caught on camera, and they held up about 5 to 8 Starbucks early in the morning, which there probably wasn't a lot of money there. But the Starbucks now aren't opening the store until later in the day. I guess they must still have their drive-thru if they have a drive-thru there, but so that people can't get their coffee on the way to work.
Yeah,
in a few stores.
You know, first of all, you know, I've done a lot of traveling in my life, and when you go to another country, you should be on your best behavior. First of all, to avoid running afoul of laws there that you may not even know exist. Second, when you're traveling to another country, you are the public face of your home country, and don't you want to put the best possible image forward? No,
because these people they're here to conquer, not to blend in.
Well, I think they're acting out because these Soros non-governmental organizations have made them a lot of promises that are not being kept. And again, it's this push toward this new world order, global government. And really, I think the people of all of these countries in Europe and here in the United States of America are looking at these illegal immigrants, these refugees. They're getting better treatment from the U.S. government, from the European governments, than the people who are the indigenous traditional populations. And people are saying there's something hideously wrong with this when our government puts us at a lower priority than refugees and immigrants. Anyway, Jeff, got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Give us a call. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, earlier in the program, I was talking about how Illinois' Attorney General is trying to find a way to stop all pay to state workers, which strikes me as kind of stepping outside her real authority because she's the Attorney General. She's got nothing to do with the accounting. And supposedly this is trying to force the government of Illinois to have an austerity budget. We know what that word means, less for the people, more for the bankers. And it looks like Illinois is in serious, serious trouble because I just had another story cross my desk here. This is from the Fox affiliate up there in Chicago, where apparently Illinois is going to stop paying lottery winners at the end of June. They're running out of money. Now, as you know, all these state lotteries are out there. We had the one in California that they always start out great, huge prizes being handed out, so forth and so on. But lotteries over time tend to become more downside than upside. First of all, the lottery in California was sold as all of the proceeds from it were going to go to the education system, which was in serious trouble. And as soon as the state government got the lottery, they cut the education budget by exactly that amount that was coming over from the lottery. So the schools did not, in fact, actually benefit from that lottery. And everybody was buying in, and the jackpots were huge. And then as people began to understand the extreme remoteness of actually winning anything, they tried rebranding it and remarketing it as a fantasy. When you buy that ticket, you can daydream of what you'll do if you win. And they get away from this idea of the fact that the vast majority of people don't win anyway. Over time, of course, as people buy tickets and don't win and don't win and don't win, they stop buying. And there is where you get into the problem, because the way the lotteries will work is that the really big prizes are paid out over time, and it's run like a Ponzi scheme. The person who won the big jackpot in 1971 is paid from ticket sales in 1972, 73, 74, 75, however long it's going to go. And if the ticket sales are in decline, you get into trouble. And there have been so many of these lotteries that have simply gone bankrupt. Huge one down in Texas, 1990s, 1980s, sometime in there. And so for Illinois to be out there saying they're going to stop payments to the lottery winners. Obviously, it's going to cause a great deal of hardship for them. But more than that, it is really a case of government failing to think in the long term when they set these things up. Everyone's just thinking about, we're going to get the money now, we're going to get the money now, we're going to look good, we're going to have a lot of fun. 2 years from now, I'll be out of office. It's somebody else's problem to worry about. And we know that there's an issue of pensions paid out to politicians. I think in the blueprint for the New America that we ought to make all government pensions a percentage of the average wage salary of the American worker. The better the American workers are doing, the richer the retirement for the politicians will be. We're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Call on in and give us your opinion about whatever you care to give us your opinion about here. Now, as you know, Donald Trump campaigned on and is now starting to deliver on the overwhelming burden of government regulations. And the reason we have so many regulations is because politicians and bureaucrats suffer from what is called the law of the hammer. And the law of the hammer is very simple. If you give a child a hammer, everything they encounter looks like a nail. And the same thing is true of politicians and bureaucrats. They're paid to make laws and regulations, and they will, just to prove that they need to go on getting these very fat paychecks full of taxpayer dollars. And very often they'll come up with regulations that don't make sense, are completely ineffective, often contradictory, but it's just a volume of building this stuff up so they can say, see, I did all of this, even if none of it makes any sense. Well, Donald Trump has signed a new executive order saying that there will be no more new government regulations unless everybody is following what is now being called as the 1 in, 2 out. Now, Trump believes that the burden of overregulation is a major stifling factor on the U.S. economy, and yes, it is. Regulatory compliance is a huge cost of doing business here in the United States of America. Now, for those regulations that actually serve a purpose, health and safety, we can understand there's a need for some regulation. But many regulations are put on out there. They don't serve any useful purpose. Even the ones that claim to be serving a useful purpose aren't even being, they're not even being enforced. It's just an excuse to make businesses fill out additional paperwork and to hire some congressional neppet to sit at a desk and pump the paperwork along. And I'll give you a very good example of that. The Minerals Management Service, which knew for 4 years before the Deepwater Horizon disaster that the manual blowout preventer on that drilling rig was overdue for mandatory maintenance. And that's why that thing failed the way that it did. Same thing with the Securities and Exchange Commission. They got all kinds of regulations over there. They weren't interested in actually enforcing them against Bernie Madoff for 12 long years. Well, if you're not going to enforce the regulations, let's get rid of them. And let's get rid of that burden of bureaucrats whose entire existence is based on processing the paperwork. Because there are too many regulations. And when you're a company who's trying to manufacture in the United States or run any other kind of a business, that paperwork burden becomes a significant loss. And that is one reason why so many businesses decided to go to other countries. Because the regulatory burden is more reasonable, as are the taxes. And, of course, that process was accelerated during the George W. Bush administration when they changed the tax laws to encourage offshoring of jobs, which created this massive, still officially unacknowledged unemployment crisis in this country, where we have more than 90 million legal American citizens willing and able to work who have not been able to find jobs for months, if not years. Now, if you talk to anybody in business, they will tell you your management staff should never exceed more than 10% of your total workforce for a business. More than that, you're losing money. But American businesses are known for having huge executive staff. Everybody wants to be an executive. And it's all political. We have more government workers in the United States than we have people actually doing manufacturing. And then we have all those people afterwards who take the manufactured goods and they stick labels on them. You know, like, always make sure both feet of the ladder are on the ground. Like, we don't already know that. It really is ridiculous. And I'm glad Trump is starting to pare these things back. And we need to start pointing out where regulations are either pointless, gratuitous, or, no matter how well-intentioned, simply not being enforced at all. And we need to start paring that back, because that will help bring businesses back to the United States. It will also help small businesses to start up again. And in the years before the 2008 mortgage-backed security fraud meltdown, small business was responsible for 65% of new job creation. Okay, we're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And then we're going to go ahead and take a phone call from Al in Canada. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Does it ever strike you as a coincidence that sometimes some things happen at just like the right moment?
Well, I don't think those are coincidences. There's a lot of staged events being put on out there to try and manufacture the news to push a particular point. And what's really amazing is to see how somebody will take a particular event and then spin it and twist it all kinds of different ways for political gain.
Yeah, well, this apparently they've named the shooter in Quebec, and he was a big Trump admirer. What a coincidence.
Well, this story keeps flipping back and forth because Reuters claimed they'd arrested these two white supremacists. Then Canada came back and said, we haven't arrested anybody. We think we're dealing with some Salafists, and now they're back to saying he's a Trump supporter. So I wouldn't trust that story either.
No, and, you know, like this stuff is always political. I mean, you know, these things happen up here in Canada as well in the United States, and, you know, I'm always suspect about them, especially, I mean, you know, especially with you know, Donald Trump putting a 30-day, you know, like a temporary ban on the, you know, the 7 countries, and this is just ridiculous. I mean, it couldn't have happened at a better time, as far as I'm concerned. It's seeing as, you know, our liberal government are a bunch of globalists that, you know, hey, GM's moving jobs down to Mexico. What happens? Nothing. Nothing. Nothing said. Oh, okay, bye. You know.
Well, corporate media is still serving corporate interests, and it's rather amazing to see all of Trump's detractors accuse him of being a fascist, because what we're seeing is our elite establishment corporation media complex, they're the ones acting like fascism, acting with this attitude that corporations and government should be partnered together against the general population, because that is the classic definition of fascism.
Yes, yes it is. Anyway, I was, you know, kind of hoping to get your opinion on that. Just another quick thing about what you were talking about with government regulation and everything. Being a millwright, you know, it's ridiculous up here in Canada. If it moves, guard it. And they actually have come out, Mike, with a ruler that you can adjust. So basically, the bigger the hole, the farther, like the bigger the hole of something is, like a guarding hole, the farther away from a moving part it has to be. There is actually a ruler out now. That's how ridiculous this has come. And that includes anything. If it moves, guard it. Any machinery whatsoever.
Well, you know, to me that makes a lot of sense. Okay, I don't have a problem with that, mostly because when I was young, I knew a young lady who had lost the tips of her fingers working in a factory. So I'm actually okay with regulations that actually serve a useful purpose. But there are so many regulations about putting stickers on ladders and hammers and all this other stuff that really don't don't serve a real purpose, and too many regulations that actually have a good purpose that are simply being ignored and not enforced for political reasons.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, it's actually, the sticker thing is ridiculous up here in Canada. I mean, it's on everything. It's everywhere. It's every single place you can imagine it could be on almost anything you buy. Anyway, I appreciate your time, Mike.
All right.
Great show.
Thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. I just had a flashback to a memory. And when I was younger and I was working with NASA, I spent a summer as the resident at the Table Mountain Observatory. And back then it had a radio telescope which had been struck by lightning and was in the process of being repaired. And I remember there was this government-mandated sticker on the moving parts of the radio telescope saying, not to be hand-carried by less than 2 people. And we're talking like a 40-foot dish. They are somewhat ridiculous, but that's my job, to put stickers on things. I have a PhD in sticker-onedness. All righty, now then, getting on back. Oh, we got another phone call. Sherry in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. Just real quick, so you've been talking about money and markets and stuff. I was in a major, or I'm still there, major brokerage for like 30 years. Money came out of my account, just kind of disappeared one day. And I had anticipated problems. There were some problems overseas, so I had taken a lot out. But they didn't get a lot. But anyway, I called and they had me fill out forms and stuff. And they said, oh, someone brought up the wrong numbers and accidentally transferred money out of your account. And I said, I didn't have transfers on my account. I haven't had transfers on my account since I started it. I funded it. It made money. I sent for checks. Okay, I'm not kind of no tech stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
I put it put my account on a whole new track. Probably for a retiree, isn't doing much with her account these days. Well, now I can't always get a trader to execute my trade. And I've been getting real nervous about this. I went through a service representative to transfer out most of my money. Now, most of my money's out here in an account, little account at a good, strong local bank with no interest rate, no credit cards, no ATMs, no debit cards. And I can go in and write a check, and certain family members can go in and write a check if they have to. Okay, and that's where it's sitting to live on for the next 15 years or 20 years or whatever I've got. Okay, transferred out most of my money. Now, at the end of February, I have some Silver iShares left in there. I could take them out now, but I'm going to wait till the end of February. And here's the question. I've been nervous about March. You said something about March being a bad time to be in the market or something. Do you remember that?
I think one of our callers did. I think in general, with that story we did earlier about the Dow may be at 20,000, but the companies that make up that Dow industrial average are reporting very weak earnings. And the two just don't make any sense. It's another reminder these numbers are being rigged for political gain. Now, I'm not a financial expert. Anybody could look at my bank balance and know immediately I'm not one to give advice on how to get rich. But at this point, I think you're doing the right thing in terms of, without incurring the various tax penalties, trying to get your wealth out in some kind of a wealth storage form. And you should have no more in the bank than you need to pay your immediate obligations, and you should have the rest at home under your control, some in cash, some in silver and gold. Because when the system starts to come apart, here in the United States of America, they've already changed the laws to literally allow the banks to rob your accounts to keep themselves solvent, to go into safety deposit boxes, and they've redeclared bank savings account holders as unsecured investors in the bank, meaning if the bank goes under, you're supposed to share in the losses. That certainly is a far cry from what banks were when I was a kid. And that's why they're pushing this cashless society, so that you are forced to have your money in the bank so it's there for the bank to play with if they need. But banks do make mistakes. I've had a couple of my deposits go walkabout, and they weren't able to find where they went. And, Claire and I are trying to be as much cash-based as we can, because we had this horrible experience a few Christmases ago where somebody with one of these card readers, these remote no-touch credit card radio receivers, somebody was walking around the mall with a backpack, scarfing up these credit card details.
Wow.
And you need to understand, in the early days of getting everybody to use credit cards and bank cards and everything, the banks would cover the losses to assure you that this was a trustworthy system for you to use. Well, they don't do that anymore. If you are the victim of fraud, you are the victim of fraud, and you get to, to bear those losses. And of course, my response to that would be, well, I'm going to tear up my ATM card. And now the bankers are coming back saying, well, we're not going to have paper money anymore. You have to use your plastic card, even though it makes you vulnerable to fraud, and you'll have to pay for the fraud. We, the bankers, have decided that you'll be dependent on us for all your financial transactions.
I'm hoping seniors that are on Social Security will be exempt from that, because there's no way I'm going to do that. So, I mean, this is unprecedented what happened to me. A trader that won't put through your transaction, and you wait for the confirmation to come through the mail, and it doesn't. Oh, gee, we made a mistake. Sorry, you were talking to one of those representatives that just, takes down the information that don't actually. Well, this is weird. So for people who have had this problem, don't rule out the service representative, because they really apologized and got me someone right away that could execute the trade.
Well, one of the problems we have throughout the entire financial system is this idea of layering, and it actually began all the way back in 2008 with the mortgage-backed security fraud, where they broke the securitization chain, where the people selling those mortgages were completely unconcerned whether they could ever be paid or not, because their job was to sell the mortgage, and then they would sell, their job was to get the signature on the mortgage. Then they'd sell the mortgage to the aggregator, who would put them together, sell them to the investment company, who would sell them to their investments. And nobody was really all that worried about whether these people signing the mortgages could really pay for them. And we're seeing layering now, for example, with my health insurance. There's like 20 different people that I have to go through depending upon which question or anything I need. And none of them know what anybody else is doing. They're just sitting in their little cubicle, and they get paper shoved in through a tube on one side, they write on it, and they shove it out the other side. And it results in a huge amount of confusion, and these things do happen. And we need to go back to this idea of having skilled workers who are dealing these things, who are basically looking after whatever the activity is, insurance, mortgages, your trades, looking out for them from beginning all the way to the end, and just having that overview, because the more fragmented it becomes, the more everybody has deniability of responsibility, and that, of course, is a very, very bad trend. I
think we need to keep it simple now.
Yes.
Keep it as simple as you can.
I absolutely agree, and I think one of the reasons why they're going the other direction is it does create jobs and make the job market look a little bit better. Again, for the people at the very top who don't want to be bothered with manufacturing or filling out paperwork and everything, it's good. But it does tend to erase accountability. And again, if you go back to all these government regulatory agencies that are supposed to be looking out for us, they really aren't. And again, I go back to that example of the Securities and Exchange Commission ignoring the evidence of Bernie Madoff's wrongdoing for 12 years.
Yeah, that really kind of got me going here to decide to call in and say they're still at it, so watch out. But I can't give advice except that I got a confirmation from someone who said something I thought good, because I was really iffy how far into March I should go, and I still am. I'll just sell what I've got. Whatever it is by the end of February, 1st of March, and hope that I bring in a little chunk there at the end and can get it into my account safely. You know?
Yeah, but again, you should have some of it at home as cash while they still let us have cash.
I do. I have it.
Don't tell on the radio. Don't tell on the radio what you're doing, because nefarious people are probably listening.
Yeah, it's not all home. I mean, it's safe. It's safe.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
We are all going to have to protect ourselves through the coming hard times because the corporations aren't interested in protecting you. They just want to make more money off of you. The government isn't interested in protecting you. They just want to protect their civil service paychecks. And as much as I like what Donald Trump is doing, I don't think he's going to be able to stop this economic upset. And
I don't think so either, and and I think Earth changes
Sherry,
are going to kind of change things.
Sherry, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and I'd like to make a point here before I get into this next story. Very often we see a lot of people screaming about they need rights, they need protections. Generally what they really mean is they want some kind of a legal advantage over everybody else. And we have been seeing that, well, for example, this caterwauling about what restrooms we're going to be using and so forth and so on, and, you know, where we need to reverse discrimination to cure discrimination, which is nonsense here. So the LGBT community is in an uproar because Donald Trump is going to sign another executive order that's going to roll back Obama's LGBT protections. Now, they weren't really protections. They were special programs, special funding into that community, various other things, and they like the free handouts, and they're upset about that, but they're out there screaming that Donald Trump is anti-LGBT. And then a dose of reality hits them in the face, because Judge William Pryor, who is very much anti-LGBT, has now been removed from Donald Trump's list of possible Supreme Court justice nominees. And we need to be very, very careful, because what Donald Trump is trying to do is get rid of the waste, the pointless spending, the gratuitous regulations and laws that have made our society a total mass confusion. And we're going to see all these people screaming about, oh, they're removing our protections. No, he's just taking back the free stuff, because our economy can't handle the free stuff anymore. And we need to remember that a lot of the hue and cry used to push this agenda of special protections for any group is usually created with hate crime hoaxes, of which so many have been exposed lately. Oh, somebody painted a swastika on my door. We need special protections. We need the government to spend more money on us. We have to have security, and it's all politics here. Now, up until recently, in fact, up until today, the tradition in American politics has been that an outgoing president will refrain from commenting on his successor for 1 year. And Barack Obama has thrown that out the window. He's out there criticizing everything that Trump is doing. He's out there saying, how dare you undo all of my executive orders, and whining and crying like a liberal, as it were. Getting on back to that issue of being sensitive to your public image. If you're going to be out there rousing the rabble and so forth, whether it's the color revolution, the Maidan, racial issue, you have to think, how does what I'm doing look to the general population whose support I need if I'm going to bring real change to our society? So up in Seattle, there was a Black Lives Matter component to the anti-Trump protest, and this guy's out there screaming, we need to start killing people. Now, that's not a very positive image. And the more these people scream and cry and cause property damage and make everyone around them afraid, the less likely they are to actually succeed in accomplishing anything of any good. I mean, just imagine if back when the Thomas Jefferson and the boys were trying to get rid of Great Britain, if they'd gone into the colonial schools and started beating up on the students and damaging the classroom and burning the textbooks, how far do you think they would have gotten? And the answer is not far at all. If you seriously intend to bring about a change to society for the better, you must have the support of ordinary people. And the more you go on out there and commit acts of violence, the more you go on out there with fear-mongering rhetoric about killing people, about wanting to see white genocide, the less popular support you're actually going to have. But the closer and closer we're coming to a civil war, and nobody wants that. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. I'm looking at this story out of Kansas.com, where apparently California is now banning state travel to the state of Kansas over concern of discrimination against LGBT. Governor Brown, don't you have more pressing concerns like the economy, like infrastructure? I don't know what's gone wrong with those Californians. I mean, it's just, they're out there. They're still pushing this liberal, political correct nonsense. Now then, as I mentioned before, former President Obama has broken with past tradition in not waiting for a year before commenting on his successor. And one of the things Obama is out there, he's rejecting any comparison between Trump's immigration policy and that of Obama. Now, Obama deported a lot of people, and apparently Obama's issue is that Trump is deporting the wrong ones. Now, remember when Obama came into office, he was very strict on immigration. But somewhere between his first and second term is when George Soros really began pushing this New World Order, open society, no more borders, flood everybody into everybody else, and Barack Obama went along with it. And unfortunately, way too many world leaders are on board with this globalist agenda because they all go to bed at night dreaming of their particular derriere polishing that seat on the golden throne of planet Earth. And none of this is for the benefit of the people of planet Earth. It's all for the benefit of those who desire that top spot and all the wealth and power that it conveys. Now, while I would like all the people of planet Earth to get along together peacefully, I'm opposed to any idea of a single global government for a wide variety of reasons. First and foremost, within any nation, any government, it is only a matter of time before a tyrant seizes power. And if there are not other nations to hold them at bay, what happens? Second, national borders serve the same function with planet Earth that fireproof doors do in an office building or watertight hatches do in a ship. They contain a mishap to protect the whole structure. Yes, if you prop open the fire doors in a building, it does seem like things are a lot better and you can get from place to place. Same thing if you lock open the watertight hatches on a ship. You can get around much faster. Everything looks like it's better until you get that first leak or that first fire, and then the whole structure is destroyed. A big part of the reason why the 2008 mortgage-backed security meltdown was such a problem for Europe's banks was this push toward economic globalism, of linking all the banks together. And because of that global linking is why when one country in Europe gets into trouble, all of the countries of Europe get dragged down with it. Now, third, if there is a single global government, we know from watching our own government, from those of Europe, that those in power love to preserve the status quo. Campaign rhetoric, to the contrary, they're not really progressive. They want to keep things exactly as they are right now, this moment. If you have a multiplicity of countries across the globe, then you have opportunities for experimenting with new social systems, new ways of running a society and a country. Always the search for something better. If there's a single global government preserving its own status quo, then social evolution comes to a halt. That's basically it right there. And, of course, we need to remember that with the global government comes a global private central bank that will hold us all as debt slaves until the human race goes extinct. That's the plan. As I mentioned to that caller before, we can call it neo-feudalism. I think mankind, I think human civilization is best served with a world with hundreds of little tiny nations, each sovereign, self-dependent, trading across borders, tourism, everybody's friend, nobody large enough to be an inconvenience to their neighbors. That is what I see is the best possible ideal. So, now then, apparently the Japanese embassy is paying a British think tank, the Henry Jackson Society, to plant anti-China stories in the media. So when you see all these stories about how bad China is being and so forth and so on, again, it's not what's really going on. It is manufactured propaganda. And at some point, I think all of the people of planet Earth are just going to wake up and realize we're always being lied to by government and corporate media. They never, ever tell the truth. There's nothing true on the corporate news media except the weather report and the sports scores, and they're not even all that good on the weather reports because they're pushing the global warming agenda. Now, a while back, I used to have a lot of respect for Rachel Maddow. And lately, though, she's gone so far on board the liberal agenda, she's starting to harm her own credibility. Over at Riv.com, they've got a story asking, is Rachel Maddow becoming a liberal Glenn Beck? Just too extreme, too rigid, and apparently they're criticizing her because she did a 26-minute monologue that spanned 2 segments on her MSNBC program. And apparently she thought she had delivered a heck of a story, but there really wasn't anything of substance to it. Now, we're hearing that NBC has successfully pirated 2 of Fox News' top hosts. And it looks like NBC wants to become the new Fox News. Well, I think it would be better if anybody wants to regain an audience share is to get rid of the known liars and start bringing in new blood that are really going to report on the news. Of course, that is not what the corporate media's business model is. Their business model is they are paid huge amounts of money to be convincing liars. And these days, everything they continue to do is only destroying their credibility that much more. All right, let's take a phone call. Dan in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I just thought maybe we need to give credit to where credit is due, and I think maybe it's time to thank the Obamas for the 8 years and the fact that they didn't steal the furniture on the way out.
Yeah, at least we have to give them that that we know of. But
exactly.
Everybody helps themselves to a few little souvenirs and things, and I know this for a fact because when Richard Nixon stopped being the vice president, he walked off with a few things from the vice presidential mansion because he made a gift of a lamp to my grandmother, and she was so proud it had been in the vice president's mansion and everything. So that kind of stuff happens.
Anyways, on a serious note, so I was listening to the CBC here in Canada, our government-funded media, and they're talking about implementing a tax on Canadians to help bail out the failing media, the print media and online media and the radio and television. So I was just wondering what you thought about that.
Well, I obviously I don't agree because what they're doing is they're sanctioning and subsidizing mediocrity, and maybe they're trying to aim like a system like they have in Britain, where the BBC is supported by a TV fee every year, which amounts to a tax. But I think it's time to go back to a more realistic business climate where if you're out there and you are constantly caught lying to your audience, you should go out of business and make way for a new media company that is going to be more responsible in its handling of journalism.
Yeah, they were citing that it's needed now more than ever because of Trump and all the fake news. And I'm thinking to myself, in Canada, we're going to be paying for our own propaganda.
Well, you already are. I mean,
we already are.
Same thing here in the United States of America. The U.S. government takes money away from the American people and spends that money to lie to you, to get more of your money and the lives of your children for wars.
Exactly. I was, during the election, I would type in on Google the word Trump or the word Clinton. And every time you put in Trump, you'd get Vox News, VOX, Vox News, would come up with some, BS, bovine excrement lie about Trump and, you name it, right? And then I go, what the hell, what's Vox News? I'm looking at, sounds like some kind of grassroots journalism thing, but it's funded, it got $200 million from NBC Universal.
Yes.
So this is what the media has to go up against, or we get propagandized by these people.
Well, now hang on. I know they've got a huge amount of money. They're running deeply in the red. They're being subsidized by their corporate masters, and in some cases directly by the government. But they're all carrying huge overheads. They've got studios. They've got the lights. They've got all the union camera people and lighting and everything. Plus, they have their prostitutes and correspondents who are pulling down, in many cases, multi-million-dollar salaries. Now, the independent media, we don't have any of that. We're basically running on spare change we find under seat cushions. We don't have that huge crushing overhead. And so the advantage of the corporate media from the economic point of view is not that great. We don't need to impose a tax on the people to keep working. The audience numbers continue to grow for the independent media. And what CBC is basically admitting is they're losing their audience too from all the lies and propaganda. And their attitude is, well, we don't care if the Canadian viewers don't want to watch us anymore. We're going to force them to pay for us. And I don't think the Canadian people are going to be happy with that.
I know. Just on that same note about the independent media, and you're doing a great job, and I hope that you don't have to end up selling your pet dolphin to the tuna company.
That's time I changed that.
I thought I'd remind your listeners that, if they don't have a PayPal account, they can certainly go to the post office and get a little postal money order and send it off to you.
Yes.
You do such a great job.
Thank you.
And anyways, I'll leave you at that. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. And let's get into human-caused global warming. Insert ominous music here. If you are in, let's see, I think it's Detroit. Let me take a look here. If you're in Detroit, you may want to leave for work a little early tomorrow morning. They're expecting heavy snow, and they're expecting that it will, in fact, impact the morning commute. So you want to get on out there and just get those snow tires on and head on out a little bit early. Now then, getting on back to the media and the fake news. There was a viral fake news story on Monday that declared Ivanka's Jewish in-laws call out President Trump's unconstitutional Muslim ban. And from the headline, it might appear that Jared Kushner's parents had actually criticized President Trump's executive order, suspending the Syrian refugee program and temporarily restricting travel from 7 terror-prone countries. As it turned out, it's classic fake news. It didn't really happen. The corporate media is just making this stuff up and throwing it out as a headline and hoping that you'll read the headline, you'll believe what it says, and you won't take it upon yourself to find out what's really going on. And you have to. You have to take responsibility to keep yourself fully informed, because the corporate media doesn't see that as their job. Their job is to sell you things. A new car, a new candidate, a new policy, a new tax, a new war. Now, over in Great Britain, a little bit of good news. As you know, NatWest had declared they were just going to close Russia Today's British bank accounts just because we don't like Russia Today, and they're pointing out where BBC is lying and how BBC reported on the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 22 minutes before it happened, and how Russia Today's reported on the pedophilia crisis at the BBC. Well, apparently following a huge public outcry, NatWest has backed down, and Russia Today's British bank accounts will, in fact, remain open. I think this is a very good thing. And we're seeing all kinds of underhanded skullduggery by the establishment trying to keep control of your brains. One of the things that they're starting to do is they're starting to go to all of the net filtering companies and report truth activist websites as being malicious or being filled with porn or being this or that. And unfortunately, tragically, these net filtering companies will add our websites to their filter lists without actually checking to see if we contain whatever it is we're being accused of containing. And so I think everybody needs to learn how to use what's called a proxy, which is a web page you can go to, which will then redirect you to a web page like WhatReallyHappened.com and allow you to see it without the filtering blacking it out. But the other side does love to play dirty. I mean, just look at all the attacks on my server during the program today. These are not people who believe in open discussion, freedom of speech, fair play, morality, truth, or honesty, or ethics. Their entire morality is we have to get what we want to get, and that's a natural law. And anything that we do is acceptable behavior. And again, that's part of the mindset of a cult following. And I don't know if you're following Lee Remini's program on the Scientologists, but all of these people are in there doing what they do, absolutely convinced that no matter how badly they behave today, in the long run, it will make planet Earth wonderful. And the liberals have that exact same mindset. It's okay to riot. It's okay to attack people with a metal pole, because in the long run, we're going to bring about this wonderful utopian new age of liberalism. That's why I'm starting to call them the Church of the Liberalologists. So, anyway. All right, we're coming up here on a commercial break. We're going to have some commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. Actually, we're at the last segment of our program today, so I'm probably not going to be able to take any more phone calls here. Looking around the news here, we're already starting to see polls coming on out about Donald Trump's immigration, and it turns out, to nobody's surprise, the majority of Americans support it. They've had it with illegal immigrants taking our jobs. They've had it with all the problems being brought in with the refugees. And they're not listening to the liberal snowflakes anymore. They just want their lives back as they once were. And the closest poll I saw was 48% favoring Trump, 41% opposed. The poll that we ran at WhatReallyHappened.com, 88% of respondents support Trump's immigration ban. 12% said no. That's where those numbers are lining up here. And again, it is not targeted on Muslims. No matter what the corporate media says, Donald Trump, the executive order doesn't even say Muslim anywhere in it. Trump has placed a temporary travel ban from nations that are known to be hotbeds of terrorism, nations that do not like the United States of America, because the United States has been bombing or drone striking or regime changing them for years now. And this is a common sense way to protect us from further terror attacks. It's got nothing to do with religion, has nothing to do with race. All right, looks like we got one more phone call. We're going to go ahead and take Dino in Chile. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, my brother. We have been listening to you, my friend and I, since the beginning of your career, and we go to your website all the time and update our information. So we've been longtime supporters. I lived in Schofield Barracks during the late 1980s, so okay. I love Hawaii, and I miss it.
Well,
one question.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to get the question out, and then we can be done for time. Trump, seems like everything's going good. I'm real supportive. You know, I think I'm cautious, but my big question is, what about his relationship with Larry Silverstein? I kind of was researching that last night, and I sort of got disappointed. What do you think?
Well, you know, Donald Trump was based in New York. He's a businessman in New York. So is Larry Silverstein. It would be much more bizarre if they had never crossed paths before. And so I don't see anything that significant. When you're that wealthy in business, you're going to be in regular contact and communication with everybody else who's wealthy in business. I know there's a lot of people who wish Trump would go back and look at 9/11. At this point, I think we all know what happened on 9/11. We have more pressing and immediate issues to deal with. And I find myself agreeing with about 90% of what Trump is doing. But, you know, very obviously what Trump has done is really reveal to the American people just how we were being controlled and dominated and swindled by the political elite and the corporate media for most of our lives.
Thank you, Mike. We want to say buena noche from Chile. Ciao. Chile is a great place. If you ever want to get out of the United States, this is a great country down here.
Well, if you got some good choirs down there, we'll take it under advisement because the Lady Claire is trying to find more and better singers here. Thanks a lot. We're going to let you go. We're not going to take any more phone calls. In fact, we're pretty much at the end of the show. There's the music. All right, I got to get on out of here, get something useful done with the rest of the day. We'll be back here tomorrow at Republic Broadcasting. Until then, please take what you learn here, share it with everyone that you know. All of us working together are the independent media, and we can push back on all the lies and deceptions of the corporate media, but we have to be out there, be present, be loud, be polite, be gentle, but we have to be out there working at it. This is a war for the minds of America. It's a war for the future of our nation. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.